Ecosystem services. This is something you will definitely encounter on the test. It is a very important concept in preserving our planet's ecology because it comes down to a very human thing, and that is what's in it for me. Okay, so when you think of ecosystem services, you just think of what's in it for me. So the idea is ecosystems provide certain benefits to human beings. We call these things ecosystem services. And because if these can be identified and we can educate people about them, then it motivates people to protect the environment. So if there's no motivation to protect the environment, people aren't going to do it. But if they see that, oh, actually a healthy ecosystem with lots of biodiversity benefits me personally, I want to maintain it. And so we find is people who understand that do a good job of, like, say, indigenous people who rely on the biodiversity of the jungle. They want to keep it the way it is. People far away who just want the wood, they don't. So the purpose of this is to articulate what are those benefits that we all take from biodiverse richness, and how can we make the world aware of the benefits that we're getting from having healthy ecosystems. So we can categorize ecosystem services, benefits to humanity that we get from ecosystems, in four ways. We can talk about provisioning, regulating, cultural, and supporting. And I read somewhere to think of it as ecosystems are precious. If you can think of that, you can remember these four things. Okay, and I'm going to go through each of these in turn, but let's just start with provisioning. Provisioning basically means it can produce products that are useful to us. So a good example is rainforests. We all know that rainforests are threatened. So rainforests are a good example of an ecosystem that's under threat. Okay, so what is provided by this ecosystem? Well, there's food. Okay, so there's fish, there's fruit, there's spices, there's things in that environment that we can harvest. And as long as we don't destroy the environment in the harvesting of it, it will continue to provide us with that. We can continue to make money and have these products. It can also provide us with raw materials, things to build with, fuel for our houses, fertilizer for our crops. Again, it only works if we do it in a way that is not damaging to the ecosystem in question. But it can be done. We can extract raw materials without destroying an ecosystem and get a surface out of the ecosystem. Or we can just destroy it and have it one time and never get it again, which unfortunately some of the humans are really good at being stupid. The other thing is water purification. So, a lot of us don't really think about where our water comes from, but, you have to pay a lot of money. You got to spend a lot of your budget on water purification in an urban environment. And it's a shame because nature does this for us a lot of times. When rain lands on mountains, actually here in Korea, a lot of the water we get lands in the mountains and it gets filtered through a natural ecosystem and goes into a reservoir. And so a lot of the purification happened courtesy of the environment. So there's a benefit that we get. And then another one is medicines. And this is particularly, again, speaking in terms of rainforests, that many compounds that we use in the pharmacological world were discovered from extracting them from rainforest products. So there's basically lots of organic compounds manufactured in nature that we really don't know much about. And when we find them, we learn about their structure and their functions in the human body. And many medicines have been discovered first as compounds in nature, mainly in rainforests. All right, think about this. A mangrove is an ecosystem in an estuary that's really important. Well, it turns out mangroves, inside these roots, they harbor a protected area where fish species. So, people in Korea love fish. People all over the world love fish, right? Well, you know what? The fish that you catch out in the open ocean start here in this mangrove. If you destroy the mangrove, then you run out of fish. So these mangroves are providing a provisioning service by allowing us to have fish to eat. Then we have regulating services. So regulating services are basically how having these fairly large natural areas can moderate and protect us from extremes. So, for instance, air quality and climate. When you have a large forest system, it has a tendency to settle out pollutants into the interior of it, or where the winds aren't blowing. So they have a tendency essentially to filter pollutants out of the air. They also, because there's a lot of transpiration occurring there, they keep the atmosphere fairly moist and allow rain to fall on crops. They also moderate temperatures because they don't get hot, they don't get cold. So, a lot of cities have what they call a heat island effect. They get really hot in the day, and it's because the sun is being absorbed by rock. But if you have green space in between, then it provides that service of absorbing some of that heat. Carbon sequestration just means capturing carbon out of the atmosphere. One of the big ideas we're going to cover this year clearly is global warming. I don't think it's any secret to any of you that carbon dioxide released in the atmosphere is causing global warming. And hopefully by now, because we've been talking about primary productivity, you see that having a large area with a high NPP takes a lot of carbon out of the atmosphere and turns and basically sequesters it as cellulose in wood. So as these big trees grow, they're taking carbon dioxide out of the air for us, which is to our benefit. And the other thing they do is they prevent weather extremes. So when there's a big rain, if there's trees, then they tend to slow down the flow of the water, prevent the streams from flooding, and encourage infiltration. If you cut down all the trees in the forest, all of a sudden it floods. So they provided a service that you might not have thought about until you got rid of them. In Louisiana and the Gulf Coast of the United States, they basically wanted quick access through the salt marshes. So they just cut these channels, and as a result, there was this erosion. They basically lost their marshes. And it turns out, people didn't think about it, but one of these things these marshes do is, that gigantic hurricane that just came in the other day. Well, if it had come in over a marsh, that marsh would have done a lot to suppress the flooding that would occur. But in the absence of marshes, you get lots of flooding. So again, this estuary provided a service that you might not have thought about. You just look at it, see a bunch of swamp grass, but in fact, is providing you with protection. And so that, you get protection from tsunamis, landslides, and so on. So here's a good example. Here's a forest as it's supposed to look. So this is what the ecosystem should look like. We humans tend to cut down all the trees. And now what happens is when rain falls here, it just goes right down this dirt. But when it falls here, it infiltrates. The water gets purified and given back to us. So there's this provisioning service. So there's regulating services being provided by this ecosystem. And now cultural. And now don't dismiss this. This is, I think, very important. I love the term they have here in Korea where they talk about a forest bath. In my mind, it just means like I'm bathing my soul by walking in the forest where your spirit just feels uplifted and freed of the suppression that happens in an urban environment. So basically, the cultural parts is how ecosystems make us feel better, make us happy, lift our spirits. So they can be like recreational. Just people like to go camping, people like to go hiking, they like to go rock climbing. So being out in nature makes people happy. So that's definitely a benefit that people get. Tourism is one. So there are some countries like, say, Costa Rica, Belize. They said, you know what? People like our jungles. People like our rivers. Instead of just cutting down all the trees and selling it as lumber, why don't we set up nature reserves and let people pay to go on tours where they get to see wild animals or get to go rafting on our beautiful rivers or get to go hiking up and look at our beautiful volcanoes. So the tourism dollars that you can get from having a healthy ecosystem are huge. And once COVID is done and people are traveling again, I'll tell you, my wife and I, when we travel, we often look for healthy ecosystems that we can go and enjoy. Now, there's also just the pure scenic beauty. If you see like places like Yosemite or Yellowstone or just there's a lot of almost is a very inspirational aspect of nature that makes us want to paint. It makes us want to photograph it. If you just think about your background on your computer, a lot of times I walk around and go, "Oh, where's that?" Because it's just beautiful and we enjoy it. And if we trash it, we don't enjoy it anymore. If we build ugly things on, we don't enjoy it anymore. And then there's spiritual importance. There's many cultures, especially indigenous cultures, they place spiritual value on certain landmarks, certain valleys, certain mountains, certain trees. So it provides a spiritual benefit as well. just point out ecotourism, like I said, in Costa Rica, it's a huge part of their economy, and it's growing faster every day. And so there's a lot of countries that realize that this is something that's quite valuable to do. Protect your environment, the environment, and people will come and pay you to see it, and it's sustainable. And then there's supporting. So basically, having healthy ecosystems supports a lot of other things in the environment. So, for instance, uh, if you have migratory birds, so there's birds that fly through every year. If you get rid of that marsh, they don't have a place to be. You may not have those birds anymore. So, by preserving a part of your ecosystem, you are getting the benefit of having these migratory birds. If you're a hunter, you want those migratory birds. Oddly enough, in America, people like to hunt, and there's an organization called Ducks Unlimited, and you'd think they buy guns, but what they mostly do is they try to buy habitat and protect it because they understand the ecosystem service that these wetlands provide for their sport of hunting ducks. It seems kind of weird, but it makes sense. And then there's just genetic diversity. If we have these biologically diverse, rich ecosystems, the world continues to have a lot of genetics to pull from when things start to go bad, right? So it really helps. Having homogenized gene pools is detrimental to the health of a species and the health of a planet. So you want to have as much of it as you can. So that's pretty much it for ecosystem services. Again, I said it's something that you will get asked about on the test. They want you to be aware of it because it is definitely an important part of promoting the protection of the world's environments by making people aware of what they get in return. See ya.